Hi and welcome to this video on safeguarding within Baptist Union of Scotland churches. It is our hope in the coming months to release a series of short videos, particularly designed for trustees, church leaders, deacons, elders, to view to make sure they're up to date on recent legislation. Safeguarding of children and adults at risk within our congregations is a pastoral imperative as well as a trustee responsibility. And I'm sure you take that responsibility seriously. In order to help, I've produced a checklist with 12 items on it. If the answer is yes to each and every question on that checklist, you're probably already doing all that you're required to do in this area. If the answer is no in any of the areas, please take some time to review it and work out what you as a church would do in these circumstances. So the first item on my checklist is, do you have a child protection policy and set of guidelines? I hope you do, you should have, and I'm not talking about something that's simply just one page of A4. We're talking about a sizable document that give guidelines to the church on how to act in most circumstances. Secondly, do you review that policy annually? Safeguarding is an area that is constantly growing and changing with best practice developing. It's really important to stay up to date in that field. So review your policy annually and make the necessary changes. Thirdly, are you registered with Volunteer Scotland? Volunteer Scotland is the national agency which will conduct PVG checks, once known as disclosure checks, for your church free of charge unless it's for an employee, where there will be a small charge. It's really important to have a good relationship with Volunteer Scotland. They offer free training for the person who will complete the paperwork for your churches, and it is of vital importance that anyone working with children or adults at risk has a PVG done through Volunteer Scotland for your congregation. Fourthly, do you have a named safeguarding officer? Having a named safeguarding officer means someone in the church will keep an eye on all these things, will receive the correspondence from ourselves and from other agencies, and will make sure you as a church are up to date. Fifthly, do you have a safe recruitment process for volunteers, staff, and for your minister? That will include a self-declaration form, taking up of references on those who apply to work with your children and young people, completing a PVG check for Volunteer Scotland, and for all those working with children, young people and adults at risk. It's your responsibility as trustees to make sure this is happening, including if you've called a new minister, you should have a PVG check done for them. Sixthly, do all pastoral visitors, ministers and those working with children and young people in your church have a PVG specifically for your congregation. It's not good enough to be a full-time social worker. You're not allowed to work with children and young people within a local congregation unless you have a PVG for that congregation. The person we're talking about may already volunteer for 3 or 4 other organisations, even ones that rent the church hall, but unless they have a PVG assigned to your local congregation, they should not be working with children, young people or adults who are at risk. Make sure you have a PVG for everyone who is working within your church context. Seventhly, do you have a regular programme of training for those working in a safeguarding environment? It's really important that everyone who's involved with children, young people, adults at risk are up to date in their training. That will maybe mean once a year just taking 15 to 20 minutes to update people on what the policy says. A little reminder to everyone. But it will also mean every few years organising professional training for those in your church, or maybe as a group of churches locally, to bring professionals in to train your people so they know what to do in difficult and disturbing circumstances. Training is vital. Eighthly, do you display posters in your building regarding your safeguarding officer and policies? There should be on notice boards, maybe even in the toilets, a postcard or poster that says who your safeguarding officer is and what the key telephone numbers are that should be used in the case of a disclosure. Ninthly, do you have consent forms that you use for children and young people in all their activities? A variety of consent forms, one that allow you to take the young people on trips, others for when they're just in the hall, and special ones for residential camps, etc. Tenthly, do you know who to contact in the case of an allegation of abuse being made? In other words, do you know the local social work department? Do you know who the person is you would speak to there, or the department that you would speak to there? Do you have the local child protection officer at the police station within your records? So it's really important that you know one or two numbers that you can call in the case of a disclosure. My 11th item is, do you know how you're going to manage those who pose a risk to your congregation but wish to come to church? I'm referring to people who are already on the sex offenders register, but they would love to worship with you weekly. That is possible, but it must be managed carefully to reduce areas of temptation for the offender and areas of risk for children and young people. There are whole processes that you can follow if that's the case that are already recognised by probationary services and the police, and they will want to be involved in that. Make sure you have those policies in place before the situation arises. And then 12th and finally, have you joined the church's Child Protection Advisory Service? For many years now I have been recommending to churches that they join this body. It costs a little under £100 a year. For that they will give you child protection policies, guidelines for adults at risk that you can adopt, adapt and make suitable for your own circumstances. They provide training and they provide a 24-hour confidential hotline for those who have difficult circumstances to manage. Many of our churches have already used that confidential hotline and found it of great help. Others have used the training, and recently all our ministers were trained by CCPAS. So can I encourage you as a church, if you're working with children, young people or adults at risk, please give CCPAS a call and make sure that you have all the items on this checklist covered. May the Lord bless you in the work that you're doing, and we look forward to bringing you future videos. Thank you.